Hello, welcome to our History Moment channel. Today we bring a very special video that we are sure will touch you. Remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive notifications when new videos are published. Enjoy the story. One night, Laura was sitting in a bar, feeling a bit down about life because things weren't going very well for her. The woman was 35 years old and hadn't completed her degree in education. However, thanks to a friend's recommendation, she had been working as a daycare teacher for 5 years. However, a 29-year-old woman, licensed in early childhood education, had just taken her job, so Laura was very sad. Besides being unemployed, she had never had a serious relationship, and her dream was to get married and have children. She felt like life was slipping away from her and didn't want to reach 40 without having achieved anything. She was a very beautiful woman. Her dark blonde hair accentuated her features and drew attention, but she was very shy, which made it difficult to form new relationships. Now, she was sitting on the other side of the counter and discovered that a man was staring at her. He was a handsome middle-aged man with brown hair and a well-groomed beard. He smiled at Laura, and she returned the smile, feeling a bit embarrassed. They exchanged some glances, and when the blonde finished her drink, she paid for it and left. But she was still thinking about that mysterious man. The next day, she went out and applied for several teaching jobs, but none of them wanted her because she hadn't even finished university. With limited options, she went to clothing stores, shoe stores, and cosmetic stores and applied for a job at each one of them. She came across the mysterious man from the bar again. They smiled at each other from a distance, and he left. Laura thought it was a big coincidence. She spent the whole day jumping from store to store in search of work. No matter what it was, she was willing to take any job. By the end of the day, she was exhausted. So, she went back to the same bar as the night before, secretly hoping to see the mysterious man again. Unfortunately, he didn't show up, and she felt a little disappointed to have missed the opportunity to talk to him, as it was clear that the man was also interested in her. A few days later, while shopping at the market, she came across the mysterious man again. He was already at the checkout, and Laura even thought about saying something to him. But as she struggled to decide, he grabbed his purchases and left. It was the third time they had seen each other, and the third time Laura had missed the opportunity to talk to him. That same night, the girl returned to the bar, and this time the handsome and mysterious man was also there. Laura felt embarrassed when he spoke to her, but now she was determined to talk to him. She had been gathering courage to approach him for a while, and it was when he was distracted that a waiter handed her a napkin folded in half and pointed to the mysterious man, saying he had sent a note. In the document, it was written, "Can I buy you a drink?" Laura gave a big smile and nodded. Then, the man moved over and sat next to her, and they started talking. The mysterious man's name was Martin. He was 41 years old, and he was a real estate broker. He had moved to the city a few years ago for work reasons, but he was very busy and had no friends. They talked all night, and the girl was very excited, getting lost in his words and beautiful smile. At the end of the night, they exchanged contacts and said goodbye. After this first meeting, they met every day at the same time at the same bar. Martin was charming, and Laura was becoming more and more interested in him. She wasn't surprised when Martin said he had no social life. He was the reserved type and older. Laura was even more interested in the handsome man, and although she noticed some things in his behavior a bit strange, she simply ignored them and attributed them to the age difference. Time passed, and they kept seeing each other, and soon they started a serious relationship. The girl also got a job as a saleswoman in a cosmetic store. The salary wasn't very good, but it was enough to pay the bills. She was very happy with her new job and delighted with her new boyfriend. After 3 wonderful months together, Laura started talking about marriage, saying it was her dream and that she was eager to start a family, as she was already in her 30s. However, every time she brought up the subject, Martin acted coldly and said he had never thought about getting married, that he didn't believe a piece of paper could determine his happiness, that the most important thing was love, and so on. The girl felt a little disappointed, but she thought maybe over time he would change his mind. Then, on a beautiful Saturday, Laura woke up, checked her phone, and saw a message from her boyfriend. "Would you like to come over for lunch today? The kitchen is ready, and I wanted to prepare a special meal for you. I'm sending you the address now." The woman jumped out of bed, very excited, and started to get dressed. She took an Uber and went to his house. When she arrived, she was impressed by the house. She saw that her boyfriend was doing very well. It was a huge 2-story house, with a very large living room and a beautiful kitchen. Laura praised the house. She was impressed. Martin thanked her and took her to the second floor. There were 2 individual bedrooms, an office, and a master suite. It was amazing. From the terrace, there was a beautiful view of the pool area. Laura found everything very stunning. But note that the organization and decoration of the house were very feminine. There were some plants and pots scattered around the house, patterned cushion covers, and some very delicate ornaments. It didn't look like a man's house. When she pointed this out to Martin, he just said that his mother had given him some ornaments. Laura found the answers a bit forced, but as usual, she didn't pay much attention and continued with the guy. Over time, Laura began to visit the handsome man's house quite often, and soon he invited her to live with him. "Why don't you come live with me? It would be like getting married. You wouldn't have to pay rent anymore, and all this would be yours." Laura was a bit suspicious at first, but she told her friends about it, and everyone advised her not to move in with him and not to trust him. But she wanted to because she was very much in love with him. After a while, the young woman decided to give it a try and moved in with Martin, but made a request that she never enter his office. He said it was full of important real estate documents, and he didn't want anything to be damaged or lost. She understood that he had a very important and specified job with his request, although she hadn't changed her mind about an official marriage. Living together with him was enough. The handsome man was very attentive to her, and he gave her everything she wanted. After a week of living together, Martin asked Laura to quit her job because she no longer needed to worry about paying bills. He said she could complete her studies online so she wouldn't get tired of going back and forth to college. She was hesitant, but later found herself very content with her own life. She was very happy to live with her beloved. In the following months, Laura also began to notice that Martin was protective of his office, as if he were hiding something. Even when she asked about what he did there, he responded evasively and didn't allow her to enter. More and more, Laura began to feel that something was wrong, but her love for Martin kept her reluctant to investigate further. However, as the months went by, things began to change. Laura began to notice that almost every night, Martin would wake up, leave the bed, and spend a long time out of the room. At first, she thought he might be suffering from insomnia, but every time she asked if he had slept well, he would say he had slept all night, which didn't make sense. Other times, the girl heard strange noises during the night, as if someone were banging on the walls. When Laura mentioned this to Martin in the morning, he would just say that it was probably him moving around in the dark. Even when Martin wasn't home during the day, Laura still heard the strange noises in the walls. She began to get scared, but always tried to convince herself that it was all in her imagination and that there was no reason to worry. So months went by. Laura took care of the house and tried to continue her studies online, while Martin spent the day at work. The married life wasn't bad, but it wasn't exactly what Laura desired. Laura began to notice that some things were disappearing from the pantry, like bread, fruits, and even the meals she prepared and used to have leftovers for the next day. When she asked her husband, he replied, I don't know, dear. Maybe you ate it and didn't realize. How could I eat without noticing?" Another thing that bothered her was that Martin never talked about himself or his past. Laura found out that she barely knew him. So one day, while Martin was at work, Laura tried to find out more about him. She went to his office, although she knew she wasn't allowed to enter there. She began to search through his things. Finally, She found a box hidden on one of the shelves with several photos of Martim with a very beautiful woman. On the back of the photo was written, "Martim and Diana forever," and they were happy. In the photos, she thought it could be an old girlfriend and didn't like that her husband kept so many photos of another woman. She continued searching and found some clues about the man's past and tried to access his laptop, but it was locked. She tried several passwords, including hers, but without success. She decided to try once more, slowly typed Diana, and pressed enter, unlocking the screen. Breaking her heart, Laura was already upset because her husband's name was another woman's name. But when she found several online purchases of feminine items, like clothes and hair care products, she was filled with rage. She was sure Martim had a mistress and she wasn't willing to accept it. When the man came home from work, Laura confronted him angrily, telling him that she had discovered he was cheating on her and even buying things for another woman. Martim was disappointed that she had gone through his things and claimed that the purchases were for his sister. But Laura remained enraged, questioning why his sister couldn't buy those things herself. The man explained that his sister lived in a very small town, with limited access to good stores, and he did the shopping for her. However, Laura didn't believe the story and asked who Diana was. Martim almost trembled. "How do you know about Diana? I saw the photos you like to keep in your office. There's no point in denying. You're cheating on me, aren't you?" Martim wanted to explain, took a deep breath, and sat down. He looked at his girlfriend with great sadness in his eyes, which left Laura a bit confused and sad. "Diana was my late wife," he said, and Laura was speechless. "She died in a car accident 2 years ago. I was driving and a truck hit the back of the car. We flipped over, and she didn't survive." Laura couldn't believe she had acted so foolishly and eventually managed to apologize to Martim. She was very embarrassed and could only say how sorry she was. She promised she wouldn't suspect him anymore or go through his things. Martim said it was okay and that he now understood why he was so reserved. They hugged, kissed, and went to bed. After that unfortunate night, everything went back to normal, except for the noises that Laura kept hearing. However, at that moment, she told herself that her husband was right and that she should ignore it. A few days later, however, Laura woke up to a very loud noise. She jumped out of bed and started screaming for Martim, who wasn't in bed. Since he didn't respond to her shouts, Laura decided to look for him. She searched the whole house and didn't find him. This made her very worried. When Laura reached the kitchen, she saw the pantry door slightly open and moved slowly. She put her hand on the doorknob and was startled when Martim came out of the pantry. "What are you doing here at this hour?" said Laura, with a racing heart and very scared. "I was hungry. I came to eat something," the man replied coldly. "But didn't you hear the noise? Or my screams? I heard a loud noise and called you. I didn't hear anything else, dear. Maybe you were dreaming and woke up scared. I've been here in the kitchen all along." "I didn't hear you calling me," Martim said, a bit distracted. Laura was very suspicious, but thought maybe Martim was right and that she should go back to bed. The two of them went back to bed together, but the young woman was so scared that she could hardly close her eyes. In the morning, Martim went to work and the girl stayed at home. This was the perfect opportunity for Laura to find out what was really going on. She went to the pantry and everything was in place, nothing out of the ordinary. She stood there for a while, looking and trying to figure out what was going on. Martim, the night before, was in a very small room where there was only food. Indignant and shocked, she began to check the food. That was when she saw that the back wall of the shelves was stained with handprints. She began to remove everything from the pantry and found what looked like the handle of a door. When she pulled it, she discovered a secret corridor. It was as if the pantry was actually a secret door. Scared, she entered, and as she walked down the corridor, she smelled a horrible, fetid odor of feces and urine. She kept walking until she reached a kind of room. The room was very dark. There was an old bed and a dirty and smelly toilet. Next to it, there was rotten food on the floor. Laura almost jumped back when she saw a woman chained with her arms raised. The woman was unconscious, her body covered in horrible bruises. She ran toward the poor woman and saw that it was indeed Diana, the woman from the photos. Laura was completely shocked and began to panic. Diana woke up and started crying and asking for help. She said she was Carlos's wife, that he had kept her there for months because he was very possessive. "Wait, but his name is Martim," said Laura as she tried to free the poor woman from the chains. At that moment, she heard Martim calling her upstairs. Terrified, Laura ran back to the kitchen and tried to close the pantry door quietly, but it was too late. The horrible man was right behind her. "What are you doing?" said Martim. Laura tried to pretend that nothing had happened and that she was just looking for something to eat. But the man's face was now terrifying. He grabbed Laura's wrist and realized she was trembling. Then he saw the scattered food and the slightly open secret door of the pantry. He directed his furious gaze at Laura and said, "You found me out, didn't you?" Then he struck her on the head, leaving her unconscious. He dragged the young woman into the secret room while he began to tie her hands. Laura, pretending to be unconscious, suddenly slammed her head against the wall, causing him to lose his balance and fall to the ground. Laura immediately got up, and the two engaged in a physical struggle. The girl jumped on his back and hit him on the head with a broken wine bottle she found on the ground. Martim fell to the ground, and she managed to tie his hands and legs behind him, ensuring that he couldn't escape. She found a small handcuff key in his pocket and freed Diana. Then, she helped her out of that horrible prison. Laura put Diana in safety and gave her a glass of water. Then, she ran back to close the pantry door and held it shut with a broom so that Martim couldn't get out. After that, she called the police, and within 10 minutes, 5 cars were at the house. The police arrested the horrible man and took Diana to the hospital. The next day, Laura received the news that she had helped apprehend a psychopath that the police had been looking for years. The man, whose real name was Carlos Rivera, had been on the run for 2 years under suspicion of murdering his own wife, whom he had kept locked up all that time. Laura was traumatized and moved out of that horrible house to start a new life in another city. Finally, she managed to finish university and, after graduating, found a great job as a teacher. A few years later, she met the love of her life, got married, and soon became a mother. Laura got the family she had always wished for and lived a very happy life, forgetting about that terrible adventure. Good friends, that was the end of today's story. I hope you understood the concept of the story and can take a lesson from it. Put your opinion here in the comments. See you soon. Big hug and may God bless you.